Most scholars divide the feminist movement into three waves. The first wave occurred during the 19th and early 20th century. In this wave, activists focused on legal issues, primarily on gaining women's suffrage. They achieved their main objective with the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote in 1920. While they achieved this goal, there were still many faults in American society that discriminated against women. This motivated the second wave. In the words of Gloria Steinem, a prominent second wave feminist leader, the first wave was about women gaining a legal identity, and it took 150 years. The second wave of feminism is about social equality. We've come a long way, but it's only been 25 years. Women used to say, not a feminist, but. Now they say, I am a feminist, but. Feminists advocated equal rights for women, equal pay for equal work, and they worked to change stereotypes of what a woman could do. The second wave lasted from the 1960s to the late 1970s. The third wave feminist movement was heavily influenced by the second wave and started in the 1990s and continues today. This video will focus on the second wave feminist movement and will answer the question, what were the goals of the feminist movement of the 1960s and 1970s, and to what extent did this actually change the rights and roles of women in American society?
The goals of the second wave feminist movement can be divided into two categories: social changes and legal changes. Social change refers to change that occurs within American minds, households, cities, and American society as a whole. Legal change refers to change that occurs through legislation like bills, acts, and amendments, as well as court decisions. The amount of social and legal change that occurred before and after the movement is how we will measure the impact of the movement.
The second wave gained traction after the publication of Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, in 1963. In this book, Friedan shared the frustrations of women as they were expected to follow certain social norms. Societal pressures forced women to be housewives in the suburbs and take care of their children while their husbands were the breadwinners. Many women felt trapped and unfulfilled and wanted more independence and opportunities. In her words, the problem lay buried, unspoken, for many years in the minds of American women. It was a strange stirring, a sense of dissatisfaction, a yearning that women suffered in the middle of the 20th century in the United States. Each suburban wife struggled with it alone, as she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover material, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Cub Scouts and brownies, lay beside her husband at night. She was afraid to ask, even of herself, the silent question, is this all? The question, is this all, was a question that drove many women to join the movement. Betty Friedan played an integral role in sparking the second wave feminist movement, also called women's liberation.
And simultaneously, I was reading Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystique, and she was talking about the problem that had no name. And I realized that my problem was part of the problem that she was talking about, with the husband going to work all day and coming home and expecting everything to be clean and
perfect for him.
Perfect, yeah, and Betty Friedan talks about the women in the suburbs being educated and not having a lot to do with their education. Except, so I was stuck out in a suburb of Columbus called Reynoldsburg, Ohio, and after reading Betty Friedan, I knew that I wanted to go find the women's movement, find where it was.
One major part of this movement was the consciousness-raising groups. These were when women met in small groups in local communities and explored topics such as family life, education, sex, and work from their personal perspectives. These groups were used to raise awareness of the issues that were important to women. One thing that they did in many of these groups was have talking circles. The talking circles were an open space for women to discuss the issues that they were passionate about and brainstorm ways to change them. One issue that many women dealt with was the issue that Betty Friedan talked about, and that can be seen in this political cartoon drawn by Len Norris. The cartoon depicts a tired housewife cleaning the dishes and watching her unruly kids while her husband drops cigarette ashes on the floor. Many women felt trapped and unfulfilled living the life of a housewife. Germaine Greer captured another frustration of women during this time by saying, "Women live lives of continual apology. They are born and raised to take the blame for other people's behavior. If they are treated without respect, they tell themselves that they have failed to earn respect. If their husbands do not fancy them, it is because they are unattractive. It was ideas and realizations like this that many women could connect with and work to change. These groups helped spark a lot of social change that we see occurring during this movement because they opened up women's minds and showed them that the problems they had were shared with the many women and that these problems mattered.
Hannah, we had small groups of women, small, 9 or 10 women, talking about our lives and how we'd been stifled by our notion of womanhood and what we could do to change that. And those were wonderful, wonderful times.
Yeah.
We actually told the truth about our lives, and we heard about women in different cultures. The most important thing was that women should have their own identity and be able to walk in the world with their heads up. So I think it gave women, including myself, the gumption to speak up.
One event that was referenced by Gloria Steinem as the ultimate talking circle was the 1977 National Women's Conference in Houston. 15,000 to 20,000 women observed as 2,000 delegates from all 50 states participated in the conference with the goal of creating a plan of action to be presented to the Carter administration. Many feminist leaders spoke at this event, including First Ladies Rosalind Carter, Betty Ford, and Lady Bird Johnson, activists Coretta Scott King, Bella Abzug, Betty Friedman, Barbara Jordan, Liz Carpenter, Jean Stapleton, and Maya Angelou. This was the national conference connected to a series of state conferences that were organized after the United Nations declared 1975 International Year of the Woman. The National Plan of Action was submitted to the President and Congress in March 1978, and a month later, Carter established the National Advisory Committee for Women. This conference happened because Congresswoman Bella Abzug and Patsy Mink introduced a bill for a conference where women can create plans of action. This bill was approved by Congress, who allocated $5 million to the event. This was the first meeting of its type since Seneca Falls in 1848, and the only one to be supported by the government.
A lot of the social change that occurred during the movement was prompted by protests, speakouts, and rallies. One major event was the Miss America protest on September 7, 1968. This event was organized by the organization called New York Radical Women, and about 400 feminists and other civil rights activists attended. As Robin Morgan said in her No More Miss America manifesto, they were protesting the image of Miss America, an image that oppresses women in every area and with its purports to represent us. This event helped to bring national attention to the movement because the pageant was such a large event and garnered media attention. The event also helped to unite the feminist movement and created camaraderie within the group, as shown by this flyer advertising the protest. Women helped other women get to the event through the use of carpools and told each other to bring love, joy, hope, and yourself. Another important event was the National Women's Strike for Equality on August 26, 1970. The 50th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment. This event was the brainchild of Betty Friedan and was officially sponsored by the National Organization for Women. On this day, 50,000 feminists marched down Fifth Avenue in New York City, and thousands more across the U.S. participated in sister demonstrations. There were three main goals for this day: free abortions, equal opportunity in education and employment, and 24/7 daycare centers. These goals were not just the goals for the day, but the goals overall for the movement. The years following, women would continue to fight for these things through more public protests and legislative lobbying.
One of the major pieces of legislation that second-wave feminists worked to pass was the Equal Rights Amendment. The Equal Rights Amendment was originally written by feminists Alice Paul and Crystal Eastman. It guaranteed equal rights for women. It was introduced to Congress for the first time in 1923, and finally in 1972 it passed both houses of Congress and went to state legislators for ratification. At first, the amendment was ratified in many states, getting 22 out of the necessary 38 state ratifications in the first year. But the pace slowed as opposition began to organize. only 8 ratifications in 1973, 3 in 74, 1 in 75, none in 76, and 1 in 77. Only 35 in total. Opposition came mainly from Phyllis Schlafly and her Stop ERA campaign. Phyllis Schlafly was a conservative Republican activist who organized women to prevent the ratification of the ERA. She said that ERA means abortion funding, means homosexual privileges, means whatever else. What I am defending is the real rights of women. A woman should have the right to be in the home as a wife and mother. Anti-ERA organizers claimed that the ERA would deny women's rights to be supported by her husband. Privacy rights would be overturned, women would be sent into combat, and abortion rights and homosexual marriages would be upheld. They used traditional gender roles to lobby legislators. They brought homemade jams, pies, and bread to state legislators with slogans such as, "Preserve us from a congressional jam, vote against the ERA sham," and "I am for mom and apple pie." Supporters of the Equal Rights Amendment fought back. They lobbied, marched, rallied, petitioned, picketed, went on hunger strikes, and committed other acts of civil disobedience in order to persuade states to ratify the amendment. Ultimately, Phyllis Schlafly and the Stop ERA movement won, and the Equal Rights Amendment has yet to be ratified.
Although second-wave feminists did not succeed in ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment, they did get other important legislation passed that changed the rights of women. The Equal Pay Act was passed in 1963 and guaranteed that employees of any gender would get equal pay for equal work. Unfortunately, although this legislation was passed during the second-wave feminist movement, women still earn 79 cents to every dollar a man earns. Another important piece of legislation that was passed was Title IX, which prohibits discrimination based on sex in federally funded schools. Although Title IX opened doors to women and girls in many fields such as math and science, it is most famous for allowing women and girls to play sports.
Not only was important legislation passed during the second wave feminist movement, but groundbreaking court decisions were also made. In Griswold v. Connecticut, people were allowed the right to use contraceptives under the idea that this was a privacy right. Another important case was Roe v. Wade in 1973, which forbade states from outlawing or regulating any aspect of abortions performed during the first trimester of pregnancy. This decision was a major achievement for the women's movement, who have been fighting for the right to abortions for a long time. However, even though this was made a right, this issue remains highly controversial today, dividing much of the country and dominating political debates. This illustrates one of the limitations of the movement, that although change occurred, a lot of opposition remains.
Not only did people oppose to certain goals of the movement, like abortion, they opposed to the movement as a whole. Some of these frustrations can be seen in the political cartoon drawn by Ed Ulashak. The cartoon depicts a grumpy man trying to cook food and watch after his kids, with a caption reading, "Wife's Occupation? Organizer Women's Liberation Movement?" Men felt as if their wives were abandoning their houses and children by joining the movement. Even though women faced a lot of opposition in their fight for opportunity and equality, they continued to push back because they had suffered too long under systems of oppression. As captured in the song that is often called the anthem of the second wave feminist movement, "I Am Woman" by Helen Reddy, women had gained the knowledge of their oppression and they weren't going to back down. They were working together to lift themselves up.
But there was a culture within my family life that says the boys are better, and the boys have the high IQs and the girls have the average. Because of the women's movement, and also my interest in women's history, which I got through the women's movement. It made me more conscious of what I needed to do for myself, how I needed to express myself. And how society has changed now, it hasn't changed all that much. More women are working, and but they're still responsible for their kids for the most part. There are some gains.
Overall, the goals of the second wave feminist movement were more about social change than legal change. Second wave feminists worked to eliminate beauty standards and gender roles. They also worked to change the perception of what a woman's life could be. They wanted the world to know that women can and should do more than just marry, bear children, and take care of the home. They can get an education, learn about math and science, and get a job that they are passionate about. Looking at our society today, we can see that while second wave feminists did make great strides toward eliminating gender roles and stereotypes, there is still a lot of work to be done. They also did advocate for some legal change, such as the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, the Equal Pay Act, and abortion rights. The Equal Rights Amendment was never ratified, and while they did achieve the passage of the Equal Pay Act, women and men still do not earn equal wages. Roe v. Wade did legalize abortions, however, it remains a highly controversial issue that many are trying to make illegal. The legacy of the second wave feminist movement wasn't so much in the change they created, but in the conversations that they started. They started the push for our society to move towards more gender equality. Even though second wave feminists did not create a lot of concrete change, without their work, feminists today would not have the platforms to stand on that they do, and our society would look much different.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to go back and pretend, 'cause I've heard it all before, and I've been down there on the floor,